Happy New Year and welcome back to the Friday Vlog, where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzWeaver channel, current events, headlines that are in the news, social media, technology, and items of interest that come up during the week that are a bit of a departure from the normal coverage here on the channel. Now, it seems kind of odd saying that now that we're nearly a year of doing the Friday Vlogs, but nonetheless, guys, I want to thank all of you for your continued participation here. I know many of you here come for other content that's here on the channel, but now that the Friday Vlog is developing and being consistent, we are getting newer people coming to the channel, and I appreciate all of you. And if this is your first time here to the channel, I'd like to welcome you here. And of course, you can make yourself available to any of the content that's here on the channel. In gaming news this week, I made a dedicated video on Battlefield 5 concerning the introduction of politics into the gaming community. You can check that out up here in the top right hand corner. I don't anticipate it to be very successful as far as politics into gaming, because like people with computer science backgrounds like myself, people who work in technology, gadget freaks, computer builders, computer designers, these sorts of individuals already make up the gaming community. You know, I mean, when computers first came out, some of the programs that first came out on them were games. So gamers have been around for a long time. We know how all this works. We know the community. We know the culture. So we're not particularly concerned about how the political figures are trying to inject themselves into the gaming community. And I've had an opportunity to talk to some of my fellow gamers, and they're completely uninterested. As you'll see in the video, you'll see how, you know, we come to we go to play these games to escape the real life everyday grind, particularly our everyday tediums that we have to deal with in every day, as well as any political or news topics or anything of that nature. That's the reason why we go to game. It is our entertainment, it is our recreation. But you guys can learn all about that from the video up there, and that's all I really had for gaming. I really try to take a little bit of time off for Christmas and the new year. So into the vlog, we'll go into our next topic, and that'll pretty much wrap it up for this particular segment. But nonetheless, guys, I want to thank all of you who have been here as part of the gaming community, who have participated here in the Friday Vlogs. After 12 long years, Google is calling it quits in China. Now, it is kind of fascinating to see these changes in China, and it's important to remember here and emphasize that China is the largest population in the world, but even though they have adapted to and have developed a lot of technology, and that they have a lot of technology there, they are not a first world country. Now, if you guys have checked out some of the links that I provided with some of the vloggers that I have covered over this year who are from China, then you guys would get a better understanding of the culture and the thought processes and how China has developed, and how they're now becoming more of a nationalist society. So one can't simply just go to China. In other words, you will never be a Chinese citizen. You'll see that as a topic among bloggers, vloggers, video creators, people that are there in China, even visitors, who many of them now are now leaving. Even businesses that or foreign businesses, people in say, for example, South Africa, the United Kingdom, other parts of the world, even the United States, are now leaving China because they are becoming more nationalistic. They're kind of regressing, I guess you'd say, kind of regressing in their progressive manner under communism back to a state that they were even before a lot of Westerners started arriving to it. Now, Hong Kong and Taiwan are very receptive and open to Westerners, and of course, you know, Hong Kong was turned over to China after being a possession of the United Kingdom for many, many years. So the Western influence there in Hong Kong is still there, is still vibrant, and to an extent in Taiwan as well, as they're kind of separate from mainland, just like Hong Kong is separate from mainland. But mainland China is going through kind of a new revolutionary stage. Now, as I mentioned, China is not a first world country. They have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 cities, which can give people the impression that they are very innovative, highly technologically advanced, and to an extent they are. However, it's important to remember here that they're still a communist country. And I mean, we've seen with Xi, for example, who has decided to make himself the longtime and permanent emperor, prime minister, leader, president of China, for the rest of his life, essentially. So they are returning back to that very strong communist sense. And so the issue here with Google was that they were going to introduce their search engine to the Chinese. The problem is that even the employees at Google were concerned about the level of censorship, the level of control that they wanted to indoctrinate into the system. And then we even had Vice President Mike Pence speak out about their Google's project to try to appease the Chinese, which was Dragonfly. And basically what would happen is it would make it all a centralized system, a closed system, but because Google operates the way it does with a Western mentality, with a Western mindset, of course, we know that Google, like Facebook, aren't just providing a platform. These platforms also provide them with a kind of underhanded information system, a data mining system, a way for them to collect information, as we've seen with Facebook, who's had to go to Capitol Hill and answer for some of the activities that they do. And incidentally, Facebook is continuing to do that, because they aren't going to be stopped, because they are a platform that people willingly agree to the terms and conditions of that platform, and so they will continue to do so. It's not going to happen with Google, and it's not going to happen in China. So I'm not entirely clear what Google was hoping to accomplish, because Google could have talked to Chevy, they could have talked to Coca-Cola, they could have talked to any different companies that are already in China, and they would have told them, look, you can come to China, you can do business, but you'll never be your own business. In other words, when you're in China, you don't own property. In other words, there's nothing private there. Nothing is privatized. Everything is owned by the government. At any time, the government can shut you down. At any time, the government can ask you for information on what you are doing, and you have to provide that information. Now, yes, if you're a wealthy company and you're a wealthy individual, maybe China looks the other way in certain circumstances, in certain instances. But if you try to influence their society, if you start to try to get involved in something that the government can't control, then they're going to get very concerned. Now, it isn't that the Chinese aren't familiar with the technology, computer language, code, C++, C++, and other languages that are used to create these engines. It is the fact that China wants such a level of censorship that Google was getting uncomfortable with it, particularly the employees who were developing the software and the engineers who were developing the software were saying, hey, look, this is completely blocking things out. For example, here in the United States, if you go to a channel, or if you're in the UK, if you go to a site, it will usually tell you, hey, this site has been blocked, or this site is inaccessible due to this or that reason. The Chinese do not want those messages there. The Chinese don't want their people to know that they can't access this or they can't access that. Now, it's no mystery even to the Chinese. They have no access to Facebook, no access to Twitter, no access to Instagram, no access to Pinterest. They don't connect to any of the main social media platforms in the Western world that we all use. Now, they can use VPNs, but the VPNs are also controlled by the central government. So the central government allows VPNs to happen. Now, we can talk about tons and tons of different philosophies and ideologies of the principles of communism and the way that people react to and follow the rules and principles and values of that, but you got to understand something. This is their culture. China is a different culture, and Google tried to go in there with their philosophical, progressive, maybe kind of left, maybe even centrist mindset, and try to develop a system for them to kind of introduce them to their system of business, their philosophy of business, their ideological, their philosophical, ethics, morals, and worldviews as well, because this is all kind of part of the package, right? When you're a Westerner, you go to a foreign country, and of course you're going to observe and respect the values of those countries and cultures as well as their laws. Now, maybe not all Americans do that, but sometimes we as Americans, we as Westerners don't realize that when you enter into a foreign country, it is different. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, Miranda rights, all of the things that keep us safe here in the United States do not go with us when we leave this country. And sometimes businesses can go into these areas and think, hey, I'm going to do business here, I'm going to do business there. Even Chevy tried to sue the Chinese government because they were duplicating all their products. Now, we have talked about this here in the Friday vlogs with Serpent ZA, Lowy 86. Both of them are a part of the ADV China, or that's their other channel, and they have talked about how China copycats things, reproduces things, reverse engineers things, and creates their own new things. So when Chevy tried to sue the Chinese government, just kind of laughed at them and said, hey, this is This is our culture. This is what we do. In other words, they think that copying things is a form of flattery to the creator itself, trying to say, hey, we are very flattered, we appreciate, we value what you've done, we want to copy it, and then they make it on their own. As a matter of fact, they could have 4, 5, 6, 7 pizza restaurants right next to each other, because if they feel that one is successful, then being next to them will make them successful, and so on and so on and so on. Here in the United States, it's a little different, right? You have that competitive nature. You want to be able to have a certain market, you want to have a certain group of audiences, and so you don't necessarily want to structure your business model around being as close to your competitor as you can. But nonetheless, it is kind of different, and it is kind of interesting that Dragonfly did not end up going through there, and that Google was not able to be successful in China. Now, I don't know how this affects them financially. It probably doesn't affect them very much. But it's important to remember, Apple is there in China as well, and there's a big concern about cloud information being stored there, because at any time the Chinese government can say, hey, we want this information and we want that information, and apparently it was just too much for Google to handle, and you know, the business transactions, the legal issues, and all the things that go around it. So it doesn't matter what we thought as a Western culture, how we can introduce ourselves to the Chinese culture. The Chinese culture is the Chinese culture, and Google is now experiencing what that is like. And that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. Thank you guys so much for your likes, shares, and comments, and being a part of the Friday vlog each and every Friday. So far, we're getting very close to a year of the Friday vlog, but nonetheless, it has been a very nice surprise to see the participation and the community outreach so far this year, or as in 2018 into 2019. So guys, if you haven't already, be sure you click on that channel icon appearing right there on the screen to subscribe. This way you guys will continue to get the Friday vlogs as well as the other content that's here, and then click on that notification bell so you guys will know when the next Friday vlog is available, as well as the additional content that's here on the channel. And I will see you guys next Friday.